Hey everybody, this is Brandon again, and this is a video that's going to kind of wrap up a handful of questions I've gotten over the last couple months regarding Inkscape. If you watch the channel, you've seen, usually on Linux or on Chrome OS, as a test, I always install Inkscape, and I've talked about it on some other videos too, and people have asked a whole sorts of questions about it, so this is just going to kind of go over everything. It's like a beginner's guide to Inkscape if you've never used it before. I'm recording this on a Mac right now, but Inkscape is something that you can get on Mac, Windows, or Linux, and you can make it work on Chrome OS like we have on this channel. And so let's just go over it. First of all, what is Inkscape for? It is an application, it's an open source application like a free version of Adobe Illustrator, and it's for making vector graphics, scaled vector graphics. Now, what is that? Normally, if you draw a picture on the computer or take a picture with your camera, it's like with a Photoshop or even Microsoft Paint or anything like that, you're going to have a rasterized graphic, which is to say, like it's a set size, it's a set resolution, each pixel is a certain color, and that's what it is. So for example, if I look at a game I made called My Colony, and I look at the icon for the Amazon App Store, double click on it, load that up, here's what it looks like. A beautiful lander icon, right? Looks nice. But as you zoom in, it gets, blurrier and blurrier. This is just a regular PNG file. And so it only has a certain resolution at its own size, right? Now, let's look at the SVG, the vector version of that. And open it up in Inkscape, which is what we're talking about here. Inkscape takes a minute to load. But here we have my same icon. And I can zoom in, and zoom in, and zoom in, and zoom in until the cows come home. And it never loses its clarity. So that's a benefit. You make your graphic using Inkscape, and you can export it to any size, and it still has its graphics fidelity. And when you're using a program like this, you're not painting with like a pencil or a paintbrush or things like that. You're basically making objects. If you look at something like this, I can ungroup it. It's made up of just individual objects that you piece together. So I'm going to close this. First of all, we're going to talk about how do you get Inkscape. So if you're on Linux, pretty much every package manager out there I know of has Inkscape. So you just go to your terminal or your little store and do install Inkscape in whatever method your package manager uses. Like if you're on Ubuntu, you can just do sudo apt install Inkscape. There you go. Every software center is probably going to have it. If you're on Windows or Mac, just open up your browser, search for Inkscape. You go to the website, it's inkscape.org. Say download current version, and you'll have Windows and Mac. There you go, you just download it, install it like you would any other Windows or Mac program. Now, since I'm using a Mac, and I made a video about this, by default, Inkscape on a Mac, especially on an M1 Mac like this, is dog slow. Like, it's almost unusable. What you're going to want to do for that, this is only if you're on your Mac, don't worry about it on Windows, but the first thing you want to do when you first start Inkscape is go into Preferences, go to, where is that? Interface theming, and switch it to this, I think this is what you want to do. You switch it to this Min Wada Inkscape theme. I'm 100% sure that's right. I have a video specifically about making Inkscape go fast. I will link to it in the description on a Mac. But you have to do this to make it usable. It should be the default. I don't know why it isn't. But there it is. So anyway, we opened Inkscape. We have a document here. It's going to default to like a piece of paper, because I think like a size of a sheet of paper, because I think generally this is going to be used for making print media, but I use it for icons and graphics for video games. Now if you go to File and go to Document Properties, you'll get a Properties on the sidebar here. When you're making computer graphics, I don't like it to be specified in millimeters. I like everything to be in pixels. So I switch my display units to pixels. I go down here, I make sure everything's in pixels, And say I'm going to make an icon. Generally, I start with a 512 by 512 document. You can pick any size you want. There's a whole ton of presets here, and so that's all well and good. Now we're just going to kind of go over some of the basics here. Let me zoom in. Here we have my document. This tool here, it's called the Bezier Curves tool. This is one of the basic things you're going to use in Inkscape. You can make an object by clicking on points, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then connecting them. And here you have an object. Once you have an object, you can go to the node editor tool and make changes to it if you want. Like, you want this to be curved, you can do that. You can click on the points of it and manipulate the curves of your line like that. And if you click on the arrow tool and you have your object, you can move it, if I can do it right. You can move it, and if you click on it again, you can rotate it and do all that fancy stuff. Now down here you have all your standard defined colors. Generally when you click on one, you're going to set the fill color. You can click down here on the stroke color, and you're going to get a sidebar here, fill and stroke. I usually set it to, it defaults on this RGB slider thing. I always go over here to the wheel, which is behind my head. Let me move this. I like the color wheel myself. If you click on fill on this tab, you have pretty much any control over what color you want to make this thing. If you go to stroke, you're going to be changing the border color. If you go to stroke style, you can, I like pixels again, you can set how big you want the border to be. You can make it kind of rounded. You can make it a dashed type of thing. There's all sorts of stuff you can do with the border of your object. It's called a stroke. Now, there's some predefined objects you can do. There's a rectangle. Again, you can change the color, change the stroke color, all sorts of things. There are circles. There are some predefined shapes like a star, this pentagon. And you can also just free draw with this pencil. And what it does is it automatically gives you an object with a whole bunch of little nodes here. And you can then go through and manipulate it. You can add fill color to it and everything like that. And the cool thing about doing graphics this way as objects versus like a Photoshop, after you've put something down, you can move it. Using the page up and page down keys on your keyboard, you can reorder it. You can delete parts without having to get out an eraser tool. It's really handy like that. So what kind of stuff can we do with it? Well, you can draw pretty much anything. Like, let's just look at the circle tool, for example. And we're going to use it to make a person. See if I can draw a person. I'm going to make a circle here for a head. I'm going to make a couple eyes. I'm going to make a nose. And another circle here for his mouth. So then we could go through, you know, give him some white eyes. Why not? Maybe a pink nose. Red mouth. And then, if we want to manipulate these objects further, you can highlight them individually and go up to the object menu and say, if I can find it, oh, path menu, object to path. And what we've done is we turned our circle object into a path that we can now manipulate. We can give him a weird cone head, some big old cheeks. Oh, undo that. So we can do all sorts of stuff. And if we highlight multiple objects at once, we can go path, object to path, turn all those into a path. We can start manipulating them individually. Like, let's give him some eyes that are shaped like this. Let's make his nose kind of Pinocchio-like. Maybe he should be smiling. So there we have that. Now, suppose I just had this one eye here. I wanted to give him a pupil. Why not? And I thought, wow, this is just perfect. This is the best eye in the history of eyes. And you want a second one. You can highlight both of those. You go to Object, or Edit. I guess it's under Edit, and then go to Duplicate. And we now have cloned that, and we have two of these amazing looking eyes. Now, maybe he needs some hair. Let's get out our pencil tool. We can just draw some crazy looking hair. We can give him some brown hair. We can also simplify this object. If you look at it, it's an object with all these nodes and all these paths. You can hit Control L or Command L on an apple and kind of dumb the hair down. And you can keep doing this until it's basically nothing. So that's a fun thing you can do. Say we wanted his hair to have a gradient color. There's a gradient tool. We can do a linear or a radial gradient. I'm going to switch it to a radial one, which is this icon. And we're just going to start here. We're going to give him some fancy hair. Now if we want to edit the colors of it, we can go to our, let's see, I think we click on one point in the gradient here. And then we move the color slider around. Here we have the transparency of it. So we can turn that up. So we can give him half red hair and half green hair. There, he looks like a typical college student now. We can do some other things on objects too. We can do transforms. You can do these by the toolbar, or you can find these in the edit menu. But say we wanted to flip his nose the other way around. We can do that. But if we wanted to make it upside down, we can do that. We can rotate it. We can do all sorts of things. Say we wanted to turn his smile upside down into a frown. We can transform and flip that. Say we wanted to resize this whole thing. We can hit Control and Shift on the keyboard. And we can kind of resize it while keeping it centered where it is. We can click on the whole thing and rotate him. And if we hit Command G or Control G on Windows and Linux, we can turn all these things into one group. So we just have to click on it once and we select all this stuff. I can duplicate that with Command or Control D. Now we have another one. We can flip it. Now they're both kind of looking at each other. We can layer them on top of each other. We can make this guy blurred. Make this guy half invisible. And so now we have two crazy looking guys that we made. And if we want to save it as a PNG file for sharing or for posting or uploading, you can go to File, Export as PNG. For your export area, I always say page, so you have the entire size of the document. Image size, 512. Let's just export it to my desktop. We'll save that. Now I got my image here as a PNG file. You can open it up, and that's our image, which we, as you can see now, this is a rasterized graphic, so when you zoom in, it's going to be like this. But there it is. And so I can just save this also as an SVG file onto my desktop. And we have that too, which will open in Inkscape or any other program that uses SVG files. A web browser opens these pretty good. As you can see, I can open it with, well, let's do Firefox, why not? Here's my graphic. So this is kind of a quick introduction of Inkscape. There's actually a whole lot more to it. And if you guys have more questions on it, let me know in the comments. I can do more videos on Inkscape. I just kind of wanted to wrap all the Inkscape questions up into one, and I think using the information in this video can kind of give you a starting point where you can start playing with it and making stuff with it on your own if you want to. Now, of course, I'm not Mr. Tutorial, so I don't know if this was good in terms of a lesson, or maybe it was hard to follow. I'm not a teacher, so but this is what I know about it. I use it all the time to make icons for games or graphics for video games that are going to be 2D based. And it's a really helpful tool. It sure beats paying whatever Adobe Illustrator costs. So if you have more questions about Inkscape, let me know. I can do more videos on it. But hopefully this got you to a good starting point where you can teach yourself the rest. I'm pretty much self-taught on this program, so there's probably a lot of it I don't even know. But I do use it every week, basically. And it's not too bad once you get into it. So there it is. Like the video if you liked it and learned something. Subscribe if you are interested in Inkscape, or really Chrome OS is what I talk about on this channel generally. And I hope you have a good day. Bye now.